having an emotional imbalance that is so severe that is making it present with physical signs. Like for example, the person is very uneasy. He can even get breathless. Like he has that feeling of despair. Like yeah, you're just very uneasy. So yeah, for me that's anxiety. You'll be sweating, discontrol, you don't know what to do, you're just very unfocused.
Anxiety is an emotion that is manifested by a strong feeling of alertness and worry, and it is coupled with tachycardia, tachypnea, and profuse sweat. Your heart will be beating fast, and you'll be breathing fast. People with panic attacks usually have a lot of anxiety issues.
Anxiety is, to me, it's a physical representation of worrying, where a person is seen to express or show a signs of distress, and then tension. The person gets so tensed, and the person doesn't look okay. You can see the person is physically distracted. Yes, so when one is anxious, to me, that's what it means. Thank you.
Can you remember when you were all alone in a room and you suddenly felt your heart beating so fast? You couldn't catch your breath, your hands started shaking, you were sweating, you clearly didn't know what was going on, and you couldn't control that. Or those moments when you are so scared of a particular event or so scared about something. You get worried quite often and you don't know what to do. There's clearly nothing to be worried or scared about, but yet you are. Well, that is anxiety. My name is Satara, and you're welcome to another episode of the Mental Saturday Check. On this episode, we are going to be discussing anxiety, and our main focus is going to be on identifying anxiety and what to do with it. Anxiety is good. As a matter of fact, every individual has some form of anxiety. We all do. We get worried and scared about things, and then we realize in the long run that these weren't things to be worried and scared about to begin with. Anxiety keeps us safe, it helps us judge risks, and it protects us. So we actually do need anxiety. Anxiety becomes a problem when it's too frequent and constant, when it begins to affect your day-to-day activities, when it begins to affect your life. You tend to lose concentration and sleep because of your anxiety. That's when it becomes a problem. The problem with anxiety is that it's gradual. It's not spontaneous. You don't just wake up one day and there you go, you have anxiety. No. It tends to come from minor things, little things we usually overlook, we don't pay much attention to, and before we realize, you actually do have a very severe anxiety disorder. And that's why it's very important for us all to be abreast with what anxiety is and the ways to cope with them. Anxiety disorders, or anxiety in itself, is actually more common than we would like to acknowledge. 1 in every 14 people around, 1 in every 14 persons is living with anxiety, is living with an anxiety disorder. There are so many risk factors of anxiety. We'll just list a few. 1, a family history of any mental health disorder is a risk factor for anxiety. It doesn't necessarily mean you would have anxiety. It just means you are predisposed to having an anxiety disorder. 2, being female. Women tend to have anxiety more than males. I don't know why that is, but that's just how it is. 3, stresses, ongoing stresses in your life. People who are grieving or have imminent danger or have life-threatening events or issues tend to have anxiety a lot. People who have had traumatic events tend to have anxiety, a lot of anxiety. They actually tend to have a type of anxiety called a post-traumatic stress disorder. There are so many types of anxiety. There are about 7 major. We're not going to dive into the details of it because that's not what this video is about. We'll discuss more on this in later videos. But for now, it's very important for you to know what your triggers are. And it's very important for you to know what type of anxiety disorder you have, because the anxiety disorders have their triggers. Most of the anxiety disorders have their triggers. For instance, social anxiety disorders, most of them are triggered by social events. They can't go out in public. They can't have public interactions. They tend to shy away from public interactions. They tend to shy away from things that have to do with their society. So you should know that. It's very important for us to know what anxiety is and how to deal with it, because most of us actually do have anxiety. Most of us are living with anxiety. We just do not know it. And it's very important because anxiety could serve as a foundation for a host lot of mental illnesses. Anxiety could lead to depression because of their isolation. Most people with anxiety tend to isolate themselves. Anxiety breaks relationships. Anxiety tends to affect people's productivity. It actually does affect people's productivity. People lose their jobs because they have serious anxiety issues. People drop out of school because they have anxiety issues. People lean towards substance abuse because of their anxiety. The thing is, people with anxiety need something. They need to be able to cope some way. They need to be able to take that burden off. And unfortunately, some of them lean towards substance abuse. And in worst cases, anxiety actually could lead to suicide. People don't understand anxiety because they don't know what it is. That's why it's very important for us all to know what anxiety is and how to deal with it. Some of us are living with anxiety and we do not even know we are living with anxiety. So I'm going to be listing out the signs of anxiety. How do you know you have anxiety? People don't understand anxiety because they don't know what it is. That's why it's very important for us all to know what anxiety is and how to deal with it. Some of us are living with anxiety and we do not even know we are living with anxiety. So I'm going to be listing out the signs of anxiety. How do you know you have anxiety? We have the emotional symptoms, which is when you tend to worry a lot. Excessive worry about the past, the present, the future, things you have no control about. Feeling apprehensive all the time, you're feeling powerless, you always feel like the sense of danger or panic, and it's hard for you to think, you can't concentrate, and yet still you overthink. All these are the emotional signs of anxiety. Move on to the physical signs, and this basically explains the signs of a panic disorder, signs of a panic attack, where you feel, as I described earlier, you feel your heart beating, you are hyperventilating, you can't breathe, you are sweating, you are trembling, you feel dizzy, you feel like you are choking. Sometimes you even have chest pain, abdominal pain. So these are the physical signs of anxiety. We move on to the behavioral signs of anxiety, where you tend to just avoid people completely, or you tend to do some obsessive things. You need things to be in a particular way, and that's basically describes a type of anxiety. Those are the OCDs. So these are broadly signs and symptoms of anxiety. So do you have anxiety? How would you know? I hope that from this we would be able to identify people around us living with anxiety and actually help them out. Anxiety is very treatable. Just like I described earlier that the build-up of anxiety is a gradual process, likewise the breakdown of anxiety takes some time. It might take some time, but seeing a mental health professional can give you the support you need to deal with your anxiety, and in the long run improve your life and your well-being. For some people, depending on the person, the severity and type of anxiety you have, you might have therapy or medications. You might be given medications or both. You could have breathing and relaxation techniques. What happens is, in a moment when you're having a panic attack or you feel your anxiety starting, you need to be able to identify what you're going through. You need to know what is happening. You take in calming, deep breaths. And then the worst thing you can actually do is to avoid these symptoms. Do not avoid them. You need to deal with your problems. You need to deal with your issues. These are very important ways of dealing with your anxiety. Moderate exercises help as well. You don't necessarily need strenuous exercises. Maybe a 10-minute walk in the morning or in the evening could help you. You need to adjust your lifestyle. You need to eat well and sleep right. This could improve your physical and mental life, in physical and mental health as a whole. Caffeine. You need to cut down on the caffeine, because caffeine actually could trigger your anxiety. Caffeine increases your heart rate, and you could actually replace the caffeine for water or fruit juice. That helps you. You need to cut down on your alcohol as well, and you need to quit smoking, because these actually make your anxiety worse. You need to teach yourself to cope with you. You need to teach yourself to cope with your problems. This is the most important part of the video. Number one, you need to acknowledge your fears. You need to acknowledge what you go through. You need to acknowledge what makes you scared. You need to know your triggers. Stressful events, you need to know your triggers and stay away from them, or try as much as possible to adapt to them if you can't stay away from them. You need to adjust your pattern of thinking, because sometimes you affect your mental health just like your mental health affects you. When you have people around you that say things or do things that give you anxiety, you need to try as much as possible to stay away or cut down on those people, because as I always say, mental health should be your number one priority. You need to expose yourself to the things that give you anxiety. Yes, if you have anxiety of, for instance, speaking in public, you need to expose yourself to speaking in public, and then the unknown becomes known. You tend to realize that there is actually nothing to be so scared about. There's nothing, you have nothing to lose. So you need to expose yourself to the things you are scared of. It's difficult, very, very difficult. So that's why you have to start small. You have to be able to talk to yourself. You have to teach yourself what you want yourself to do. When you find yourself in such a situation, you calm yourself down, because sometimes you actually don't have people around you who could help you. And even if they are, they don't know how to. So you need yourself. You need to be able to sleep well. You need good sleep. You need to sleep well, and you need to manage your time. People, if you have anxiety where you get overwhelmed with things, one technique I use in order to prevent my anxiety or getting overwhelmed with things is I try to list things down. When I wake up in the morning and I realize that I have a lot of things to do, I literally take a sheet of paper and write down everything I need to do, because I need to see them. Then I realize that, okay, it's not so bad. I will do this at this time, and maybe do this later on in this time. If something comes up, I add it to the list. I take it when I'm done. This actually helps me keep things in order not to get overwhelmed. Don't take on too much than you can handle. That's very important as well. So these are just some few coping mechanisms I actually really hope would help you. So thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. I would really be interested in knowing what you think, and if you have any questions, you can kindly leave them below as well.